this rubric should look a little bit familiar to you because it kind of looks like the FRQ, but we're only adding documents in. So y'all got our packet, right? And it has the prompt there. It says, most historians state that one of the overarching catalysts of the Civil War resides with the issue of slavery. No duh, right? Nearly everything that it permeates into that issue. When we moved west, was slavery an issue? So like even, like, I've drawn this out for my other classes. Like I think about like the Civil War, like the causes, like slavery is the overarching issue, right? Can y'all tell me other issues that slavery permeates into? We said westward expansion, right? What else does slavery go into?
Political parties.
Political parties, we just saw that. What else does slavery go into? Territories, which is westward expansion. It goes into the economy. Does it go into religion?
Yes.
Does it go into compromises? Okay, do y'all see that is slavery the overarching issue? But I could start looking at different issues individually and being like, well, we didn't have slavery, would religion have ever divided up? If we didn't have slavery, would westward expansion ever been an issue? So yes, we could concur with historians, right? Slavery is an overarching issue, but does that give us a nice category? That would be a really long essay to just talk about slavery, and would it be organized? So the second part is saying, however, it could be justified that other issues ignited the sectional differences that led to the Civil War. So here are the other issues. If we ever move west, if we never moved west, that America was just the only Mississippi, would we have ever had the issues of westward expansion? No. If we never had the Second Great Awakening, would we have ever had the issues of slavery being a sin? So we're going to write this essay from the perspective of the other issues. These other issues kind of dovetail us into the Civil War. Could I have put the bank here? Could I have put tariffs here? Do you see these other issues? Do they set the foundation? And we know slavery is just going to exacerbate everything, right? So our first thing it asks us to respond to the prompt with a historically defensible claim that establishes a line of reasoning. To earn this, you must make a claim that responds to the prompt rather than restating the prompt. So if I were to say, yet although slavery is the overarching cause of the Civil War, other issues cause the Civil War as well. Would that count? No. Because basically I'm doing what? Restating the prompt. So we're going to work, but we have to go through the documents to understand where the documents are pushing us before we develop a thesis. But basically repeating that will not get you this point. The next one, it says describe the broader historical content relevant to the period. You have to describe the process before, during, or after. So let's look at the dates it gives us. It says use the documents and your knowledge of the period 1800 to 1860. Whoa, is there a lot of stuff going on at that time? 1800, if we look up here, whose presidency does that start with? Jefferson, right? So I could go from Jefferson all the way to the election of Lincoln. Is there a lot of eras going on? Yes. We have the War of 1812, right? We have the era of good feelings. We have westward expansion. We have the Second Great Awakening. So can I just get credit for saying those eras? No, what do I probably have to do with them? Describe them, okay? And then, could I even refer to what's after this period? What happens after this period because of all of this disunity? We get the Civil War. Would I now get that point? Have I set up the context? Yes, and you're probably doing this throughout the essay, and that's setting it up, okay? This next one, this is new. We saw thesis, we saw contextualization when we did our free response with the compare and contrast of the colonial America. Here, this is different than English, okay? This is way different in English because in English, Miss Scott and Miss Huskinson, they ask you to make these nice little envelopes, right? And in those envelopes, you have little cards that have what? Quotes. Because you need those quotes to be able to support your argument in their essays, right? However, here, it is a little bit different. It says you're going to use the content of at least 3 of the documents to address the topic of the prompt. The response must be accurately described rather than simply quote. Am I asking you to do something different than what you do in English? Yes. Can you quote in this course? No. And so we've been working on documents of the day, right? And every single time we work on those, we have to put the document in our own what? Words. And if you could do that for 3 of the documents, you get a point. If you do it for 6 of the documents, you get 2 points. Okay? So you cannot what? Quote. Okay, I have been grading DBQs for AP, and now I grade short answers, and they can't quote. I get so upset because people, they lose their points when they quote. Okay, you lose, and are these the easy points? Yes. This next point, use at least 1 additional piece of specific historical evidence beyond that found in the documents. The response must describe. So can I just say, like, a document would be the Alien and Sedition Act? Could I just say that? No, I would have to describe the Alien and Sedition Act was a response to the undeclared war with the French, and so Thomas Jefferson was upset about them being silenced for criticizing the government. Have I now described it? And that's what it requires you to do for that additional document. And we have to relate it to other documents, which we'll look at. Okay, how do you feel about thesis, contextualization, evidence? The last thing here is for at least 3 of the documents, explain how the document's point of view, purpose, historical situation, or intended audience is relevant to the argument. Haven't we been doing this with our document of the day? Yes. Here, you must explain. You must explain. So that's a key thing. The first one was describe, right? So remember when we were doing that why polarization and we were talking about the reactions? That's explaining, right? So the last thing here is the level of analysis. To demonstrate a complex understanding of this historical development, you must use evidence to, here, we're going to analyze multiple variables. We have the Northern's idea and the Southern idea, right? And also, we're going to explain multiple causes, okay? I know this seems like minutia, but do you get where you're being graded from? So what we're going to start off with is looking at our documents. We're going to look at our documents so we could get what points? What points are we looking at? The evidence ones, right? Because once we do the documents, then can we come back and write a thesis? Then can we come back and focus on the era? And then can we come back and focus on the causes? Okay, so let's look at our first document. And I want you all to see this first document. If I can find it. What is your first document? It's a map. Okay, is this going to be hard to quote?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so one of the things my people have been asking me is, like, when you write an essay, what sounds better? Document A, or according to the westward expansion map, it was evident that sectionalism would reside with the issue of territorial acquisitions. What sounds better, document A or the document's name? Okay, the document's name. And I'm telling you to use the document's name because when you write in college, are you just going to be able to refer according to page 13? Or according to, you need to refer to the name. So if y'all are taking the AP test, it's just going to sound a lot better if you say the name. So let's put the name of the document here, Westward Expansion. I want us to think from a perspective. Do we have enough evidence here to determine the point of view of this map? Do we have enough evidence here? Do we have enough evidence to figure out who the intended audience of this map is? Do we have enough evidence to figure out what the purpose of the map is? No, this is not Dora the Explorer's map. You know, Dora's map had the intention of helping Dora, right? That was its purpose. Its intended audience was Dora, right? And its point of view is that it was going to be helpful. We know that of Dora the Explorer's map. Do I know this of this map? There is not enough content. So I will tell you every single time, if you ever see a map on a DBQ, should you do intended audience, point of view, and purpose? No, think of Dora's map. That's the only map that has a point of view, a purpose, and an intended audience. So, what is my category that I'm going to use here? Historical situation, right? So, this is going to take up most of the paper. But I need to summarize this document. What does this document show me? Westward expansion and our territorial acquisitions that is going to lead to what problem? The sectional balance, right? Or either maintaining it or when it tips, right? So that's a summation of this document. This map shows me westward expansion and our territorial acquisitions that is going to lead to our sectional balance or misbalance, right? So do y'all get the summation of the document? With this document, could we quote? So this document shows me westward expansion and our territorial acquisition that leads to the sectional balance or imbalance, right? So I want us to look here. We know our periods from 1800 to 1860, and I'm looking at things that caused the Civil War. What territorial acquisitions here can I not really say that caused the Civil War? What areas can I say did not cause the Civil War here? Which one? Gadsden? Could we possibly say about the internal improvements there? Yeah, we could. Okay, what else could I not talk about? Okay, Oregon. Oregon does not lead to the Civil War. Okay, what other areas does not lead to the Civil War? Florida Treaty? Yeah, Florida does not lead to the Civil War. What else? Webster, 1818. Does the Treaty of Paris lead to the Civil War? Not really. So, looking at here, what sections can I really talk about as causes of the Civil War? Louisiana, Texas, Mexican, and Gadsden, which we're going to refer to internal improvements there. So I'm going to have to do the historical situation of these areas. Do I have to do all of them for this doc? No, I just have to have one proving that as we move west, the territorial acquisitions will lead to the balance or imbalance of our nation, right? So which one should we talk about first? Louisiana. So if I were to go talking about Jefferson and Jefferson's questioning about the constitutionality of the purchase of Louisiana because Napoleon has sold it because of Toussaint Louverture's Haitian Revolution, is that relevant to the causes? Is that relevant? No. So what would be the first thing that would be relevant for me to talk about the Louisiana Purchase and how this territorial acquisition will lead to the balance or imbalance of our nation? What's the first thing I could talk about here? Is it Kansas? Is Kansas really the first thing? No, what's the first thing? The Missouri Compromise. So can I just say Missouri Compromise according from what I read in my rubric? No, what do I need to talk about now? I have to what? I have to describe it. I have to talk about what happened. So if I'm going to refer to Louisiana Purchase, I'm going to talk about Missouri. Missouri wanted to come into the Union as what? A slave state. What would that do to the balance according to what I've been saying with this document? It would tip it to favor the, so Congress comes around and does what? They create a new state to balance it out. That would be what? Free, which is what? Maine, sober Maine, right? Maine now becomes a free state. Does that maintain the sectional balance that I was talking about in this document? Okay, is that it? Is that the only thing that they do in the Missouri Compromise? What else do they do? They set up a line. What is this line? Anything above 3630, what would not exist? Slavery. Does this show us trying to maintain that sectional balance? And that balance is really going to be important. That's going to drift our nation into the Civil War. Is this the only thing that I can refer to in the Louisiana Purchase? Is there something else that I could show how the balance kind of got unbalanced? Yeah, what else could I refer to here? When we bring in what? The railroad, right? They're trying to get the railroad to go to California. And so they're trying to organize what? Kansas. But are we going to follow the Missouri Compromise? No, they're going to come up with this scheme, this pea brain of an idea that Kansas would come in as what? With popular sovereignty. And does that lead to chaos now? I just talked about maintaining the sectional balance, but now do I have something that I could talk about more in depth about how the balance got tipped here? Why would I say that the balance got tipped here and everybody gets thrown into a tizzy? What has happened? What do I have to refer to before Kansas? Before 3630. Remember, the balance is tipped. Why? What else do I have to go back to talk? I kind of have to come over here, right? And I have to talk about the admission of California with the compromise of 1850, right? California comes in as what? Free. What does this do to the balance? It tips it towards the free side because there's 16. Are we now playing in a lot more stuff into this document? And so now this leads them wanting Kansas, the South, to be what? Slave, because the balance is tipped against them. And we talked about them being desperate. Where have they gone to search for that 16th slave state? Do you see the level of description you've done now? Have you nailed down causation? Wasn't that one of the things on the bottom of analysis that you had to do? We had to talk about this. Well, it's going to lead to that, but it's because of this over here. Have you done causation? So now, are things going to go crazy with Kansas? Can we talk about people who are trying to undo the balance? Who are some people I could bring up that are trying to undo this balance? John Brown, right? The Missouri Border Ruffians. What does that do to your paper when you mention this stuff? It thickens it. Does it give the causation now? Okay. Is this paper going to be a little bit longer than you traditionally write? Yes. Okay. I think you'll have the content to be able to write this. How do y'all feel about Louisiana? Louisiana Purchase. Do y'all have a level of depth now? Okay, so what's the next thing we could go to? Texas, okay. They originally tried to bring Texas into the Union under Jackson's administration. Do they allow it in? Why not? They could possibly split up Texas into how many states? 5. And what would that do to the sectional balance, which we described in this document? It would tip to the slave side. Oh, this is a very easy argument, right? It's a double standard because does the North want the South to have it? No, but does the South want the North to have it? And this is why, are we seeing eye to eye? Are we getting more polarized? And so this is why the Civil War is occurring. Because our nation is not being like, okay, we can't compromise. We can't do something to benefit one area or benefit the other area. So eventually, Texas does not come in, right? So does this prove my argument that we're trying to maintain a sectional balance? Eventually, Texas comes in, right? But do they break it up into 5 states? No, they make it into one big one. Why is Texas? Do you now understand why Texas is so big? Texas is so big because the North did not want Texas being how many states? 5. Texas is big because they wanted to maintain that balance, so they only let it in as 1. Do I now have an argument here that proves what I've been saying in this document? Right? I don't know how many of you wrote it down, or you're going to go back and watch the video to get it. Right? Or y'all it's there in your heart because it's Texas. Okay, so what's the next area can I go to? Mexican cession. And we know that this comes out with the Compromise of 1850. But was there something before this compromise that was trying to tip this balance? Starts with the W. It was done by the Whigs. The Wilmot Proviso. What were they trying to stop here in the Mexican cession? Slavery, because they said that that's would tip the balance to favor who? The South. Oh, is this getting a little bit thicker now? Gosh, the computer just gave up. It was done with slavery. Okay. Am I getting more depth when I bring up Wilmot Proviso and the Whigs trying to prevent it because they want the sectional balance? And then can I bring up the Wilmot Proviso, does it pass? Who rejects the Wilmot Proviso? The South, because they're like, this would not be fair to our sectional balance. But then they come out with this compromise, right? Which we kind of talked about. Who does the compromise favor by letting California in as free? The North. So what is given to the South to appease them? What is this? Fugitive? The only reason why they agree to that compromise is because they get a harsher fugitive slave law. Does it even work out for them? No, because what do the Northerners do? Are you doing causation when you relate one thing to the next thing? Okay, this paper will be a little bit longer, but you have the content for it. And even then, can I talk about other causations. Once California goes in, where do they go for desperation? Cuba, Nicaragua. Okay, our last little area to talk about is Gadsden. Why was it purchased? A railroad. Why would the South be okay with this? Because they did not have internal improvements. Does this fit the scope and sequence of everything about the balance? Does it? No, this is about internal improvements. Everything else was about westward expansion. So I know we have a lot of detail here. Some of us got what we needed. Some of us wrote notes for the future. Some of us are going to go back. But what we need to look at now is what categories would this fit in? So I'm going to pull the categories up here versus y'all having to turn your necks, because the people on the other side of the video won't be able to see because they can't turn their neck. Okay, oh gosh. Is this belief systems? That it is ideas, it is religion, philosophy, cultural values? Is this document that we just saw? No. Okay. Is this document America in the world? Competition for resources, expansion, imperialism? No. Is this geography and the environment?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Is this politics and power?
Yes.
Do I see Congress coming in making political decisions about this era? Yes. Is this identity? Gender, class, racial, national, regional identities? Okay, no. People in movement and migration?
Yes.
Yes. Is this the economy?
Yes. Kind of.
Kind of. Okay, but what of the categories I picked, what are the strongest categories? Geography and what else? Migration. Okay, and even politics, right? Okay, so let's look. Do you see how long this took, right? There's a level of depth we're getting to. That's why it's going to take us several days. So let's look at our next one. Okay, great. I have a document. What can't I do with this document?
Quote.
Quote. Okay, so let's read, sorry, I have no clue what happened. Okay, so it says, this is Senator Henry Clay's speech to the Senate, February 12, 1833. So what am I going to refer this document as? Henry Clay's speech. So it says, I merely throw out these sentiments. What does sentiments mean? Feelings. Okay, so that's feelings. For the purpose of showing you that South Carolina. Okay, so he's throwing out feelings on who? Having declared her purpose to be this, to make an experiment, whether by a course of legislation in a conventional form or legislative form, and enactment, she can defeat the execution of certain laws of the United States. So he's saying, I'm throwing out feelings on South Carolina, that South Carolina cannot do what? Defeat the execution of certain laws of the US. What does that mean? To defeat a law, what does that mean? Are you following it or not following it? Nullifying, that's a good word. You are nullifying. So he's saying, my feelings on South Carolina nullifying laws. I, for one, will express my opinion that I believe it utterly impractical. So does he agree with South Carolina nullifying or not? So his feeling is that he disagrees with South Carolina nullifying. Is that now in our own words? He said, go ahead and write that down because I don't know if you're going to memorize it or put it in your heart or something like that. But he says, my feeling towards South Carolina nullifying is what? Does he agree or disagree? He disagrees. He disagrees with South Carolina nullifying. Okay. I will express my opinion that I believe it utterly impractical whatever course of legislation she may choose to adopt for her to secede. So not only does he agree that they should not nullify, but he doesn't agree that she has the right to what? Secede. And I know it's spelled wrong on y'all's paper, but it's spelled right up here. I say it is impossible that South Carolina ever desired for a moment to become a separate and independent state. So he's also saying they don't have the right to nullify, they don't have the right to secede, they don't have the right to be what? Independent. Have you now put it in your own words without quoting? Have we? Yes. Collectively we have. Okay, so historically, what is he referring to? What is he going over in 1833 that he'd be like, South Carolina, you don't have that right? The tariff. Like, so let's talk, let's look, we need some depth, right? So I'm gonna go back to some notes from a long time ago. Oh, they're over here. What tariff is he talking about that they're really upset at? Tariff of abominations. That it raised prices to 45%. Well, 45% the tariff, right? So, that's describing, but have you told me their reaction? Why are they upset with the tariff of abominations? It does what to price? Forcing them to buy from whom? The North. Who are they not buying from? Not buying from. Who are they not buying from? Britain. And Britain's not buying what from them? Have you explained now why they're upset? What's causing their reaction? Have you given me analysis? Yes. So I'm going to give you, do y'all need time to write that down in the historical situation? Okay, what, we have this stuff, right, that we wrote that they're upset because they have to buy what? American, it protects American manufacturers, they're not trading with who anymore? Britain, and Britain's not buying what from them. Okay, so now let's look at the next part. Where are you? Right here. Who do you think his intended audience is? Well, the document gives us that, so can we say that? No, because he's talking about here that they have had a course of legislation, a conventional form, and a legislative form. Let me go back to my notes. Let's see who he's talking to. Because this is, what was the date? Tell me what the date was.
1833.
What, February what? 12. So now let me come down here. February 1st. Let's read about this. In mid-1832, South Carolina extremists were ready to put the theory of nullification to practice. They vigorously denounced the tariff of 1832 as constitutional and oppressive to the Southern people. Do we know why it's unconstitutional? Do we know why it's oppressive to them? Yes. In the fall of 1832, South Carolina legislator, so do y'all get what he's referring to now? They called for a state convention, right? He brought up the legislator, he brought up this convention to consider the issue of the tariff. The convention on November 24th, 1832, by a vote of 136 to 26, adopted an ordinance of nullification. This is that legislation, declaring both the 28 and 32 null and void. After February 1st, if the tariff duties were not to be collected in South Carolina, should the federal government forcefully attempt to them, they would collect them. South Carolina would secede. Let's go back to this document. The date is the 12th, right? Is he really responding to the Senate? Who is he responding to? The South Carolina Convention over the what? Tariff. Is that very specific now? I'm gonna tell you that the intended audience on a lot of these documents are very specific. So if you were to have said the Senate, would you have gotten it wrong? Yes. What do you think his purpose is here? Does he want them to go? He wants to keep the union together, right? And he will, because eventually I'm going to show you some, I'm going to come back to these notes. Come on. He organizes the compromise tariff. Remember, Henry Clay reduces the duties? So over here, it asked, what was his purpose? Well, we know he's trying to keep the union, and how does he keep them? What does he do with the tariff? He lowers it. So that's his purpose. Keep the union, and eventually he will lower it. So then, his point of view, was he pro-South Carolina or was he against South Carolina? Was he pro? No, he was trying to keep the union together. Okay? So then what we're going to look at is what categories are these? Is this economy? Yes. Is this peopling, movement, and migration? No. Is this identity? Is this politics and power? Yes. Is this geography and the environment? No. Is this America and the world? Is this beliefs? Yes. They believe that the thing is hurting them, yes, but eventually, what are our strongest ones? Politics and economy. So beliefs, we'll probably not use it on this one. Okay. Do y'all see how long it's taken us? Okay. We're behind. We need to do document C, so this one shouldn't take that long for us to get through. But we're going to do this. It's the Declaration of the National Anti-Slavery Convention. That's the name of it. You can just underline it so you don't have to refer to that. This is their annual report at an American Anti-Slavery Society. It says, we believe and affirm that every American citizen who retains a human being in involuntary bondage as his property is a man-stealer. So, in our own words, a person who holds slaves is what? A man-stealer. Okay, that's fine. because it's not more than 3 words. Do they like people who hold people in bondage? No, they disagree with it. They said that slaves ought to instantly be set free. What would we say there? They agree that what should happen with slavery? It should be abolished. There we go. Okay. It says that all those laws which are in no force, omitting the right of slavery, are before God utterly null and void, being an audacious usurpation of the divine prerogative. Okay, so they're invoking God here. And what's God's stance according to this person on slavery? God says slavery is, he's against slavery. Because apparently they interviewed God, but they know God.
Yeah.
Okay? They know God's against slavery. Can they go to his Bible and at least quote some scriptures? Okay. They said that no compensation should be given to the planters emancipating their slaves. So if we did get rid of slavery, what would not be given to the planters when they lost their slaves? Money. No money would be given to them if they lost their slaves. That if compensation is to be given at all, it should be given to the outraged and guiltless slaves and not to those who have plundered and abused them. So, if our government's going to set people free, who should the government give money to? Slaves. Slaves should be given compensation. The next part says that we concede that Congress, under the present national compact, has no right to interfere with any of slave states. So can Congress come into the states and tell them what to do? No. Okay. So they're saying Congress cannot come into the states because states have what? Rights. It's again, right? It did that on Wednesday.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. It did it first period yesterday.
You did it to us.
It did it to us. It's just, no, it's 9:46 apparently. Okay, so it says, so Congress cannot come into the states and tell them what to do in relation to this momentous subject of slavery. But we maintain that Congress has the right to suppress the domestic slave trade. So Congress can't tell slaves what to do, but Congress can stop what? Because it's between the states, okay? And Congress controls interstate commerce. So Congress has the right to stop the slave trade and to abolish slavery in those portions of our territory which the Constitution has placed under its Congress exclusive jurisdiction. So Congress can abolish slavery where? No, they say somewhere specific. In our territories. Because do y'all remember the Northwest Ordinance? Congress has authority over territories, right? And then they become states, but do they have control over the states? No. So they're saying Congress, they can't interfere with slavery in the states, but they can interfere with slavery where? Do I have something that I could go back to be like, oh, every time that Congress gets an area, Congress tries to make a ruling on these territories? Can I refer to Louisiana? Can I refer to Mexican cession? Yes, right? All right, so looking at this, what historical situation is going on for this group of people to commence on an anti-slavery convention? What has happened? The Second Great Awakening. Remember that Second Great Awakening that now looked at slavery as a sin? That is the historical situation, because if we never would have had the Second Great Awakening, would we have had the abolitionist movement? No, because we wouldn't have had those ministers like Lyman Beecher and Charles Granston Finney who started to challenge and look at things that were ills in society, right? I have a historical situation. Who do you think the intended audience of this is? Who do they keep on mentioning? Congress, right? But could they also be advertising to other moderates to join the abolitionist movement? Okay. What do y'all think is the purpose of this document? Is that purpose next? What do they want to do? Okay. What is their point of view? They're abolitionist. Is that outside information? Because anywhere in this document did it say abolitionist? No. Alright, so now let's look at our point of views. Not our point of views. Is this beliefs? Ideas, religion, art, yes, right? Is this America and the world? Is this geography and the environment? No. Is this politics and power? Yes, they're kind of telling Congress what they can and cannot do and what they should. Is this identity? Is this people in movement and migration? Well, the one thing on the territories, right? Right? Is this economy? No, not really. Okay. I'm sorry, this was very taxing.